Hello, BookTube, and welcome to your Daily Penguin, our tour through my Penguin Classic wall. We are all over the place. We're all over the map. Uh, in the last few months, we've been looking at the first bookcase. I'm just going to proceed left to right, and the first bookcase was marginally organized, so we were looking at a lot of the ancient world. And we are now moving on to the doorstep of the long modern era. We're moving into the Renaissance and the Northern Renaissance. We're moving into uh, the age of the movable type and the printing press and whatnot. And today we're doing a classic. Obviously, today we're doing a massive volume. There are a number of times in this March of the Penguins here where I have mentioned that sometimes if you're a reprint house like Penguin, there might be a great edition of something out there that you just don't have access to. The person isn't willing to sell it. They aren't willing to lease it to you. You don't have the right to reprint it. It's under someone else's copyright, and they're not playing ball. So in the course of this little tour so far, I have pointed out, for instance, translations of great works or editions of things that I wish were Penguin classics, but instead they exist on their own. They're not part of the Penguin line. But every once in a while, often, Penguin Classics will get their hands on a great edition of something. An edition where, even if you were canvassing the field for various editions to get, you would pick this one. And this is a case of that. This is an edition by R.A. Rebholz of the collected poems of Thomas Wyatt, who was a courtier and poet in the court of King Henry VIII, and that is Wyatt. That is not an out of focus detail from a tapestry of some kind. This is Hans Holbein again. I mentioned yesterday that Hans Holbein, in addition to creating all sorts of work on his own, art on his own, like the Dance of Death that we saw yesterday, he also gave us beautiful portraits that, in the way that portraits can be, are better than photographs of a huge number of people from his era. And so that when you look at this, you're looking at Thomas Wyatt. You're looking at the way Thomas Wyatt struck Hans Holbein when Holbein knew that he was painting, in this case drawing, someone who lived and walked among all the people that he knew. In other words, this wasn't the same thing as Holbein is, among other things, famous for an inaccurate painting. He's famous for a painting that does the opposite of what I'm saying. Well, he did a painting of a prospective wife, a European princess, for Henry VIII, and made her look considerably better than she really did in real life. And there were all sorts of psychological and political elements involved in that. But a quick drawing like this, that was as far as I know, not done for an exorbitant amount of money, not done for public display, but still publicly viewable. People would have looked at this, and the people who would have looked at it looked at Thomas Wyatt every day. so this is not just what Holbein thought Wyatt looked like. This is also probably what Wyatt looked like, although boy oh boy, this drawing gives you no idea of what he was like when he was 20. But this is Rebholz's edition of Wyatt's poems commits what purists would consider to be a sin. He lightly modernizes the spelling so that that's not getting in the way. But compensating for that, and who cares what purists think, is a scholarly apparatus that is just unbelievable. I have read many editions of Wyatt's poetry, and this is by far the best. Now, I agree, of course, with the people who say that great poetry shouldn't need annotation, that great works of literature shouldn't particularly need annotation. But if you want it, and you're going to want it, because Wyatt is writing, in many, many cases, he's writing poems that are very thinly veiled about real people and real events, and that's going to be of interest to you. It'll be a separate kind of interest from going through these poems for their beauty, or for their incredible energy. There's an incredible sexual energy that runs through a lot of these poems. It's the very world-facing, unabashedly passionate worldview that could be characterized as the Tudor worldview of the era of Henry VIII. That in not all Tudor eras, of course, it wasn't the outlook of Henry's father, and it wasn't the outlook of Henry's children either. But in Henry's age, especially when Henry was young, comparatively young, that was the idea. And nobody embodies, no poetry embodies that better than Wyatt. And so you can read his poetry for that, and even if you don't know the historical antecedents or the details in any way, I think it will get to you. I think it will work on you. I, of course, am not going to read Wyatt. What is that sound I hear? Oh, baby, are you eating something? Oh, she's misbehaving. Oh. Now, why is that? Why are you misbehaving? Do you want to go outside? Is that it? And you're misbehaving until you get your way. She screamed her head off at a sweet, fat, old, white-eyed yellow lab this morning. One of those yellow labs that has reached a point where they are just love personified. Where they're just a couch cushion personified. All he wanted to do was just love everyone. And all she wanted to do was scream at him at the top of her lungs that he was walking wrong. Or how dare you look at me like that. Not aggression. My little baby has never bared her teeth at any other dog. It's not aggression. It's more, I want to tell you exactly how you should be doing things, and if you do exactly what I say, we'll be friends. And having said that, I also want to point out, I don't know why, that once again I want to remind you that the only breed of terrier that does not come from England are miniature schnauzers, and they come from Germany. Anywho, I'm going to put you down, all right? But don't eat anything, baby. Only bad dogs do bad things in order to get their way, right? You're not a bad dog. You're a horrible control freak, but you're not a bad dog. However, what I was saying was that, yes, you can read the poetry of Thomas Wyatt for all of that emotional just haymakers, and you'll like it for that. Especially once you get in the hang of it, once you get in the rhythm of what Wyatt is writing. But I don't think there's anything wrong with being really, really interested in everything that a really careful scholarly annotator can tell you about these, and you'll never get that better than this Penguin volume. That is not always true, right? We've seen that already. That is not always true. I have shown you many Penguin translations so far, even, or Penguin editions of works in English, where I could wish that the edition were another one, a different edition that I know, but that it just isn't for whatever copyright reason or whatever. But this is not one of those cases. This is fantastic, just fantastic, endlessly readable, endlessly interesting. The stuff that Reb Holst digs up in the connections that are made, in the clarifications that are made, just the whole back chunk of the book is notes, and they're endlessly interesting. So that is your Penguin classic for today, is the complete poems of Thomas Wyatt. I have written extensively on Thomas Wyatt. Once again, if I can find any of those pieces, then I will clean them up, which takes a long time, unfortunately. Unfortunately, the old venue where all of my so much of my writing exists is gone, and a lot of that stuff has been mass ported over to a new location, and that ruins the links, and it ruins the formatting, and it ruins the type fonts and everything. And I have been learning, as I've been digging in to that vast treasure trove of Steve prose, that quite a bit of it did not make the transition. Which is a little bit alarming. It's a little bit alarming. You get so used to the fact that the internet, quote unquote, the internet never forgets, that you hate to think that thousands and thousands of words of your own prose are gone. Same thing is true with, there are a couple of websites that I wrote for 10 years ago. Whenever the editor was willing to take a piece of mine, I would do it. And a couple of those websites have hit rocky times, or been reconfigured, or just disappeared. And I don't know where that prose is. I'm pretty sure that it's gone, unless I become familiar with this thing called the Wayback Machine. I've had a couple of people point that out to me, it's cumbersome, but it can find anything. Maybe I need to do that and do it soon, so that my stuff isn't just lost forever. If I can find any writing that I've done on Thomas Wyatt, I will gladly append it down below. And if I forget or if I fail, then keep in mind, there are a few of you who are interested, it is always a good idea. When you're talking about anything new, anything in the middle distance old, like 10 years old, 20 years old, or anything very old that's in a classic or a reprint of some kind, if you're curious, it's always a good idea to simply go to Google, type in my first name, my last name, and then the name of the author, and see what happens. You will almost always, in a great number of cases, that will turn up something. But I will try to remember. But anyway, that is the Penguin Classic for today. And boy, oh boy, it's a classic in both senses of the term. Because this could easily have just been a selected Wyatt, or a collected Wyatt with no critical apparatus, or a collected Wyatt with very minimal critical apparatus. There was a collected Wyatt with very minimal apparatus from a reprint house that's no longer with us, that was making the rounds at colleges and universities in the early part of the 20th century. I'm sure that edition would have been easy for Penguin to snap up and just reprint with Wyatt's face on the cover. Instead, they didn't do that. Instead, this edition is the one that you want to have anyway, which isn't true of a lot of the Penguin Classic English poetry, so, as we'll be getting to. So anyway, that is your Penguin Classic for today. That sound you hear is my schnauzer digging away. She is digging away. She's a little bit restive. I'll walk off a lot of that energy later today. But there you go. That is your Penguin. It's the collected poems of Thomas Wyatt, a strong recommendation. I'm going to wrap this up, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.